don't really need it. Later, you need something more. We will talk about that later as we go on. But PFA is, since it is first aid, PFA is given by the first responder. In usually, say for example, in a disaster management situation, a person is pulled out from a building rubble. Okay, a person is pulled out from the rubble of a building and put on a stretcher. Okay, the first thing you can, if the person is still conscious, I am here, you know, the person may be having, or maybe disoriented, maybe crying, maybe scared, maybe shaking, maybe, you know, lots of things, maybe yelling, screaming, help, help, help. The first thing, the first person, the first responder is the person who's going to give the PFA, you know, and he will be under, I wouldn't say understanding, he will be the first to console that person. In psychological counseling, we do not console, okay? In psychological counseling, we do not console. But in PFA, we console. Real Runwamin, give them a good feeling. We're trying to give them the best feeling. Whereas in counseling, we don't always try to give them the best feeling because we want them to look into their self and realize if there is a mistake, their mistake. But in PFA, we don't do that. The first responder is the one who is going to console. The first responder is the one who is going to be that for that person, the first person who is there and give the support. You know, it is like unconditional support that you give to that person. If it is a hug that the person needs, give the hug. If it is a pat or, you know, water that the person needs, the first person who gives the water is the person who gives the PFA. You know, so we differ. The person who gives PFA differs, but the method will also differ because we need to, but the person who needs to be the first responder needs to understand what are the symptoms of distress response to crisis. You have to understand. So that is why I'm giving you all these, responses, because as I've mentioned before, how one person respond to a crisis differs from the other person. And if one person is so numb, so shaken that he is not able to respond, it does not mean that he is suffering less than the person who is yelling and screaming and shouting for help. You know, we have ways. Every person has a set of ways in which they respond to crisis situation. This is what I'm trying to tell you here. So a person who is the first responder, the first person who gives the PFA, needs to know that people react in different manner in crisis situation. Just because he is not yelling and screaming does not mean that he is not suffering, you know, does not having distress. If it is in the case of trauma, everybody stresses. It's just that their way of expressing that or responding to that stress differs from the next person. But what you have to understand is that we all go through stresses in our life. We all go through this stress situation. We may need somebody to console us. And usually people who never had anybody to console them appear as though they don't need anybody to console them in a crisis situation also. But deep down, we need to understand that there is nobody who doesn't need anybody. Getting my point as what I'm saying.
That's a very nice point that I noted is in PFA you console and you comfort, and while in counseling you don't do that. No,
Yeah,
that's
don't do
very
that.
very
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Counseling is entirely something that is different from PFA.
Okay.
Just like the first aid box. This is a first aid box for the mind. You know.
Yes. Yes. Thank
Okay.
you,
Shall
ma'am.
we
Yes.
proceed? Okay. So this is the action principle. What you need to do. What is the core basic of the underlying principle behind PFA? You know, the first one is prepare. Before you go into a crisis situation, Before you feel that you are equipped and going into a crisis situation, you need to be prepared. You don't just go in blindly. Okay? You don't just go in blindly. Know what you are going into. Know what you go in, you learn about. You have to be fully prepared about what this crisis event is about. You have to understand what is happening. You have to know about what is happening. If you feel that you are not mentally prepared, or you feel that you are not set for this, don't go inside. You know, once you are in that, you have to be as the person's strength. So you have to learn about the crisis. Don't just go in and volunteer where you would be needing help from others, because you too are responding to the crisis in a distressful manner. So you have to learn about the crisis event. Only when you are physically and mentally prepared should you go into the crisis event. If you feel that you are not prepared, don't go. Okay? Because supposing you are the one who went in and you are the one who needs the help, then who is there to help you? Because you are going to be the one who helps others. So learn about the crisis event, and before you go in to the crisis event, do your history, do your studies. Know that if this is the kind of person that is what is it that if you are a psychologist, if you're not a psychologist, think about know a psychologist beforehand who you can refer that person to. What are the available services? Are there like simple, is there a first aid box? Because in these times there may be somebody who is injured. The first thing, just like a psychological first aid, you need a first aid box to clean the wound. Do you have food? If that person is hungry, where will you be able to get that food? Or at least know a place to hide. If I rescue this person, where will I hide? Don't just go randomly inside. Of course, this maybe that is not possible, because if it is in a life or death situation, maybe that is not possible. But at least know, if you rescue this person, where would you go? Where would you go where all of you are safe? And how would you be able to support this person? So be physically, mentally, materially prepared before you go into action. This is what we try to say here. Be prepared. Understand the situation. Don't just go randomly. See, when there's a building that is collapsing, if it is in a state where it will collapse anytime, even if there are people trapped inside, the disaster management people will not let you go inside. Why? Because even if you go out and it collapses, even you would be needing to be rescued. So the rescue work becomes double. So you have to understand the situation in which you get yourself involved with. When getting involved with a particular situation, know that how are you going to help that person? Be prepared. How are you going to support that person? Where are you going to keep them safely? Where would you hide properly? Where would you take them? How would you take them? If that person is injured, how will you take them to safety? How would you treat them? All these things you have to have it. So it is like planning beforehand. And of course, in disaster situation, it's very hard to prepare, plan. Like in earthquake situations, it's very hard to plan. But they always say in earthquake prone area, get a bag ready so that you will be able to run out with that bag if an earthquake happens. It is like that. You have to be mentally prepared, physically prepared, materially prepared. Okay? So preparation. Then you have look, listen, link. Look, listen, link. These are the three basic things that are very, very important. The basic things that are required when you are going to help somebody. As I've mentioned before, safety is a the first concern of anybody. Safety. As I've mentioned before, if you are going to be helpful, you yourself needs to be safe first. Only if you're safe will you be able to save others. Only if you are fit will you be able to save others. Only if you have the knowledge of how to save will you be able to save others. Okay? And once you save that person, what is the urgent need of that person? If the person is injured, you're saved. If the person is injured, your first aid box comes into the real use. If that person is in a state of emotional turmoil, your consolation, like the way that you console. If that person is in a state of hysterics, when a person is hysterical, there are times when you need to bring down that hysterical reaction. And so that is where, when you look out, that is where you need to understand the distress reaction, the reactions that I was talking before. And as a person who is coming for PFA, the first and foremost thing when the person is brought to safety is you need to look into the basic needs of that person and how he or she reacts to that, her or his distress reactions. Because as I've mentioned before, distress reactions can come in multiple forms, in numerous forms, and one person may be different from the other in terms of the distract reaction. Listen to that person. Look, listen, link. Okay, look, listen, link. Observe. After you have observed, listen to that person. Listen, because they may be ranting. They may be telling you that, there is somebody else who needs to be rescued. And once that is the case, you may pass on that person to another person also if you see that there are others who need your help. Okay? Or ask people where they need your help. I remember one time when we went to a building collapse scenario, and they were evacuating the buildings, and they had to evacuate a number of people also who were still safe but who were in danger. And they had a lot of complaints because they didn't want to leave the safety of their homes. But what we had to make them understand is that their homes were not safe anymore. There was a possibility that their homes could also collapse because the building next door had collapsed. And since we couldn't do much to them because it was already a governmental order. But then what we did was we just listened to what they had lots of complaints. So we just listened to their complaints. We knew that we were not going to be the persons who would solve their problems. But then they kept on ranting, then bringing out their pent-up emotion, expressing their anger, blowing up their their fuse, and we were just there to listen to them ranting. And at the end, it made them feel better once they, expressed everything that were building up inside them, and they calmed down again. So what people sometimes need is somebody to listen to them. In psychology, we call this empathetic understanding and unconditional positive regard. And we just listened to them. This maybe as a person giving PFA, you don't need to have all those qualities. But what you need to be is be a listener. There are times when we are not good listeners, but because we always tend to have our own opinions, and then when there are people who are trying to vent their angers, and then they are venting on their angers to us and telling us that how useless we are, and that you are not doing you're not doing enough, and things like that. Then there are times, since we are also human, then there are times when we lose our cool. But keep calm. Keep calm. Don't be a hothead. Just know that here, this is one of their distress reactions. They are people in distress. They need to blow out their pent-up anger or pent-up turmoil, and some maybe even crying, crying at the top of their lungs. Just be the person to console them. When the crying episode, the fit episode has entered, the ranting episode you will see that a lot of, you can see the calm. Your job is to help them to reach that calm, and it can happen even if you just listen, be passive, don't give back, don't have a reaction, don't have a negative reaction, just be a listener, then with your patience, they can reach that calm. And maybe that is what they need at that point of time. Then after they have calmed down, you need to link them to who are the people that can help them. If their loved ones are still alive, if their loved ones are searching for them, connect them to the loved ones who are searching for them. Give them social support. Provide them. In Mizoram, we have the YMA usually. Once people are rescued, then it is the time for the YMA to take over. I don't know about how it functions on your side, but then here in Aizawl, we have the YMA, especially during the COVID times. The YMA was like really, really helpful. And of course, as psychological counselors, we visited CCC and QC and all that, so that we would be able to be the service in which they can access, even tell their basic needs. Usually during the COVID times, people who were in the quarantine centers and in the COVID care centers were very scared of the illness of the virus. So what we naturally used to do is that these people who inmates used to tell us their basic needs and what needs to be done, what they want, and how, things like that. Then we relate to the people there who are in charge, and also we connect them to their loved ones and give information, maybe take a picture of them, and then we connect it, post it to their saying that they are okay, things like that. So the linkage, you are not, what you have to remember is, as a person who gives the PFA, basically it is you may not be a psychologist, you may not be a government, you may not be in the one who can give them material help, you may not be the one who can give them medical help, but be the person who initiates all this, see what is it that they basically need, and provide them access to these needs, give them the information that they need, connect them to other people who can take care of them. In psychology or in counseling or even in clinical psychology, we always tell that, if this particular patient or this particular client, you are not able to meet that person, your qualification or your techniques or your methods, if these are not helping and you feel that you are not adequate anymore, refer them to another person, like a psychologist who feel that this person needs drugs in the sense medicines. A clinical psychologist is not the person who would give medication. The person who would give medication is a psychiatrist. So the psychologist will refer to the psychiatrist. It is like that in PFA also. Of course, not to that extreme. You are the first responder. You respond to the person, kept him calm down, did whatever you can for him so that he is, his basic, that flight or fight mode has been, gone down a bit. Then the next step, if you're not able to provide the next step, link him to another agency, link him to another service who would be able to fulfill those basic needs. Okay, any question here? Any comments here that we can talk about? Am I still audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay, shall I proceed? Any comments here? What questions?
I think it's very clear.
I hope I'm making some sense.
Yeah, I like that. If it is beyond our expertise, we have to refer, and referring is very important, no?
Because not everybody has limitless capacity. We all have. Even for me, during my counseling, when I feel that they need more extensive therapy or when they need, like I've said, medication, I said, go to this hospital, go to meet this clinical psychologist. I know my limits. Like right now,
Yeah.
I'm more oriented in, well-being. So if I see anybody who is distressed or like I practice a lot of NLP. So if I feel that I cannot help him without NLP is no longer helping, then I make sure that they go to another service provider, things like that. Okay, shall I proceed?
Sure.
Okay. How are you going to, we know now, we know how to prepare, we know how to look, and we know how to support, we know how to link, right? So what are the things that we do? Okay, what are the things that we do? A person who gives NLP has to be a compassionate one. You have to do it in a compassionate manner. We have to show, the first thing we need to show is human compassion, connection. Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what is NLP?
Oh, that's different. It's a neuro-linguistic programming. It's
Okay.
neuro-linguistic programming is we usually use it in a different scenario. We don't use it in mental disorders. We use it in stress management. We use it in confidence building. We use it in anger management, stress management, things like that. And I do a lot of anger management and stress management now. No? So I use a lot of this. I use it in sports psychology because now I'm linking myself with in sport. So I teach them confidence training, how to deal with their anger issues and things like that. We can have it one time, but then it's very hard to do it online. Here we do a lot of breathing and things like that. This is not much of it is psychology. It is based on this is based on changing the way that you think. It is neuro. Okay, I'll go back to what we were doing. Okay, so I've mentioned it all. It's just how we're going about with it. So as we have mentioned before, safety is important. So the first thing that, as soon as you establish that human connection, be compassionate, the first thing that is important is how you're going to provide safety, especially in the scenario that we're talking about today. Safety is the most important, being alive and being safe. So how do you go? That is the first thing in NLP now, and not sorry, PFA. Okay, and usually your job is to calm and orient emotionally overwhelmed or distraught survivors, and they have to tell you their needs, because you don't practice telepathy and people react in a different manner. So you have to make sure that they are able to tell you what their immediate needs are, what their immediate concerns are. Some may be, if they're alive, some may be the concerns of their family. So console them. Oh, we will, we will try to find them. But don't give them false hope. We will try to find them. Let us hope for the best. Just don't say, I'm sure they're alive. But supposing they are not, it's like you're providing them with false hope. So be in touch with reality they're already distraught. And if you give them false hope, they'll be disillusioned. So when you help survivors know how to help without giving them false hope, just give them the basic information that is there. Don't try to make up information. Don't try to make, offer what is there that you know, and you are genuine and you are truthful. Don't just give them information of hope and just to comfort them. Be in touch with reality as a responder. Be in touch with reality. You may try to distract them because they're already distraught, but don't give them false information or information that you have no idea about. Okay? You will give them practical assistance, that is saving them first aid, water, food if they want to, blanket if they are feeling cold, basic things. That is very practical assistance. And also information that are, like supposing they say that, oh, where are my family? Are my family alive? If you don't know, you can say something like, okay, just take care of yourself. We will get the information from, if there are any information about them, we can get them later. But what is most important now is you. So please take care. Let me take care of you. Address to their immediate needs, not later. The immediate needs and concerns. If they're, as I've said before, if their concerns are their family, whether they're alive or not, and you do not have information about whether they're alive or not, you tell them something like, I don't know right now. We don't know. I'm not aware of them right now. I don't know anything right now. What is most important right now is you. We can ask. The information to others when we are safe, or when we have overcome this. We will ask about other people. But right now, you are the priority. Things like that. So when that has settled down, the connection can be made through social support networks. Things like that. But always make sure when you help a survivor that the immediate needs and concerns are to be addressed first, whether it is the safety needs, whether it is hunger, thirst, medical care, or calming that person down. That is the immediate. So what, as a PFA giver, your first thing is to give the immediate need, and the rest can follow later, as long as that person is safe, as long as that person's immediate need have been addressed, and you can go into the later connections of whether family members, friends, neighbors, and community. All these are later resources. These are the support system. Go to the support system later on, after the immediate needs have been addressed to. And when you study that person, when you have studied that person, when you have given that compassionate feeling and provide them with physical and emotional safety and comfort, then you can go to the next level. But the person's immediate need has to be addressed. That is the safety needs, the physical needs, the emotional comfort, and whatever that person needs immediately needs to be addressed first. So always say that your need comes first. And sometimes that gives the person a sense of security inversely, that, okay, here is a person who cares for me the most. Okay? That's what I've just said. Calm people, try to reduce distress, make people feel that they are safe and you're secure. Help people understand the disaster and its context. They need to understand it. They may not even understand the magnitude, and they may be blaming you, or they may be blaming themselves, or they may be in that situation. What they need to know is that this is a disaster. This is how bad it is. They need to understand it. Don't beat around the bush. Because they may be blaming themselves, or they may try to blame you and other people. But what they need to know is the exact situation of the disaster in which they are in, so that they would be they would be able to move on into the next level of trying to be fruitful for themselves. and everybody has a way of coping. It will be good if if they learn how to cope, and of course this comes later on, not immediate. What is most important when you are providing is PFA is that sometimes, okay, let's just see, sometimes the person you first give PFA becomes very attached to you because you were the one he met immediately after the crisis, and he feels in a way you're the person who saved him or her. So it is at this situation that they become very attached to you. If such a scenario happens, then in a way it is a good scenario because you are able to understand that person more, and you will be able to teach that person how to cope with the situation of what is going on, and you can be the person who will give hope. And since we talk about consoling, the person may have lost somebody very dear in that mishap, and maybe just next to him, may be overwhelmed with grief, overwhelmed with blaming himself that he is not able to save that person. Such a scenario take place. Then you would be the first one that he is attached to. Then you become the person who gives that person hope, and the person who teaches him how to cope, and at the same time you become the emotional support. PFA is also about giving emotional support, and of course there may be instances where the person does not know where to go, and in that circumstance he may be following around, and as long as you can help that person, but then there are limits to how much you can help. Always remember that you are not limitless, your capacities are not limitless, and there will be a scenario where the person is too needy. So it is in those circumstances that you also need to be detached. Always understand that there are also other people who needs your help, not just one. So there must be a particular point in time where you will not cut ties, but where you will refer him to another person. Okay? So in the next step, it says that get people through the first period of high intensity and uncertainty. So if that person gets through that high period of high intensity and uncertainty, you know that you are not the person who will take him to the road of recovery. If the person is having physical injury, you're not the person who's going to treat that person. You're not the person who's going to give him medical help. So it is better that you give him to a healthcare professional, maybe a nurse or a doctor. Then, of course, if the person is going through, you realize that he's going through an emotional turmoil and he's at the point of having a mental breakdown, you're not the person who is able to treat him, because we will talk about the different mental disorders, which you will know the signs. Okay, so you will try to put them in the road of recovery, but always remember that you have limitations. If you are not a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist or a medical doctor, there are limits to how much you can do. Always understand your limit. Don't try to go, as I've mentioned before, don't try, since you are really attached to that person and you really want to help that person, doesn't mean that you go beyond your limit. That is not the way that it works. Don't go beyond your limit. Know your limitations. So that is where you will link these people to response teams, mental health services, or other recovery systems.
Ma'am, I'll just, I'm sorry to interrupt. Our
No.
meeting is still 8:30.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So, participants, if you have the team, if you have your questions, please put in the chat box and we will, take them. Okay.
Okay. With this, I think I am basically done with PFA, because PFA is not something this is something that we can all practice every day. It's just that I'm giving you information on how you can go about. But then I was asked about different disorders that can happen. So I will just talk about them briefly, okay? 3 minutes. Okay.
Ma'am, just one question I'll ask, okay? Since I don't have a psychology background, I just want to ask you, and I'm being curious, this psychological first aid, this term, Is it psychology, or you being an expert, is it a term coined by you?
No, this is a term that is coined by the World Health Organization in its relief for disaster. Actually, we call it the
Okay.
psychological first aid because it is mental in nature. Just
Okay.
like we have the physical first aid, that is the first aid box. This is the first aid box for the mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's not
Yeah.
coined by me, it's coined
No.
by
Yeah, I love the presentation, and I think everything you presented so clearly, and I'm just being curious because I don't have this background. No? Thank you.
Okay, let me just talk about things you shouldn't do. Okay, don't pressure people to tell their story. Don't interrupt while they're talking. Don't give
Mm,
your opinion. Your opinion
mm,
doesn't count in PFA. Just listen.
mm,
Don't touch that person if that person doesn't want to be touched. Okay, there are people that
mm-hmm.
can't stand to be touched. Don't judge them. Okay, don't judge them. You should have done this. Why did you do this? This is not the way it should be done. Things like that. Don't just judge them. Just listen to them. Okay, don't use too many technical terms. Especially us as psychologists, we tend to use technical terms which other
Yes,
people don't
yes.
understand. Yeah, but we are
Mm-hmm.
not going to use technical terms in PFA. Don't tell about, okay, even this person was like that, even this person was like that. Don't tell other people's
Mm-hmm.
story to this other person. Just listen to their story. Don't give them examples of how other people have been coping. Don't tell them you should have been like this instead of being like this. This person was like this, but you're like this. Don't do things like that. Don't talk about your own problems. Even I was facing the same problem, but I did like this. No, your problem doesn't matter this person. Okay. As I've said before, don't give false promises or reassurances. They if they're not feeling better, if you say okay you'll get better soon, don't worry, if they don't feel better, they will be saying, oh, this person said I would be feeling better soon, but I'm not feeling better now. That person must be lying. Don't give false promises. So these are all the don'ts. Okay, you can read them again once I give you the slide. Okay, so trauma. The people that you are dealing with right now, you're going to deal with, they're undergoing trauma. Trauma is very stressful, frightening, and distressing events, the worst of the kind. Usually trauma results from exposure to an incident or a series of incidents that are emotionally disturbing or life-threatening. So usually the initial response to trauma is confusion, sadness, anxiety, agitation, numbness, confusion, dissociation, etc., and may result in recurrent, unwanted, distressing memories of the traumatic event. Usually, we respond to trauma in different manners. I've said all these before. We might just fawn, okay? That is, you fall into an illness. This is a dissociative response. You fall into an illness, things like that, or you just freeze. You don't know what to do, or you run away, or you fight, or you just flop. You just collapse. There are so many so many ways in which people respond to trauma. As I've mentioned before, they do not respond, or everybody does not respond in the same manner. There's so many different ways that in which you respond to trauma. In psychology, we call it the stress response. And when a person is undergoing trauma, whatever kind of trauma, we talk about it in three types of responses. This is a disorder now we're talking about, but then this is something that also need to know that that when they are going through trauma, there is a possibility that later on they will go through like this. So the first one is called adjustment disorder. Okay? And the second one, we call it acute stress disorder. And the third one, we call it post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay? It all happens as a result of trauma. Okay, so I'm going to enhance on post-traumatic stress disorder. Very popular, and now a lot of people would be subjected to this when they escape the events that are unfolding in Manipur. Okay, they will usually, people go into an acute stress disorder first. Okay, they will go into an acute stress disorder first, but recurrent acute stress disorders will lead to post-traumatic stress disorders. If that acute stress disorder has a duration period of 6 months, then we convert the acute stress disorder into post-traumatic stress disorder. So right now, people will talk about he's having PTSD, but you have to understand that we make, usually in psychology, according to the DSM-5 classification, we make a diagnosis of PTSD only after 6 months. Okay, so whatever kind of disorders they are facing right now would be acute stress disorders. It is, what happens is that they have more or less the same symptoms. Okay, acute stress disorder and PTSD, they have more or less the same symptoms, except for the fact that PTSD is for a longer period of time. Okay, usually for a period of 6 months minimum. But if it is like, right now, if they are experiencing all these, it is not yet PTSD, it is acute stress disorder. Okay, PTSD is usually diagnosed after this episode lasting at least 6 months. Okay, so what are the symptoms of acute stress disorder and PTSD? Number one, Adwan, you have re-experiencing, that is nightmares, where you dream about the traumatic instance, flashbacks when they come back to you in your memories, even during consciousness when the same episodes come back to you. These are called flashbacks. And something that a person sees, hear, or smell goes back, takes him back to re-experiencing those symptoms and those experiences, those traumatic experiences. These are called re-experiencing. Then you avoid situation that reminds you of ever even experiencing symptoms. Oh, sorry, I made the experiencing, event experiencing symptoms. Sorry, it is all joined up. Okay, so literally people will avoid, sometimes their avoidance is so strong that they tend to block it out of their consciousness. They appear as though they don't remember because it was so traumatic. They just erase it from their consciousness. But then whenever we try to remove things from your consciousness, they have a method of coming back to consciousness in the forms of flashbacks and nightmares, things like that. Okay, so they avoid people, they avoid places, they avoid things that remind them of the traumatic event because it is so traumatic, they don't want to bring it out into the consciousness. It feels like they have lost the memory of it, but it is usually motivated forgetting. They tend to try to forget. And okay, but then they will still have trust issues. They find it very, very hard to trust other people. They do not want to talk about it, and they are very timid when it comes to these, and they will have sometimes difficulty in sleeping, difficulty in concentrating, and exaggerated startle response. In Mizo, we call it poo, they just startle. Okay, so these are the symptoms of PTSD. But if it is not prolonged for a period of 6 months, then give it a psychologically right disorder, that is acute stress disorder. But then people tend to club it as PTSD. There's nothing wrong with it, but that is not the right diagnosis. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay, I think with this, I will come to the end of my presentation. And anything, we can have a Q&A time. Anything that we can talk about?
Ma'am, there's a question in the chat box.
Okay, let me.
Oh, the question is, ma'am, you said that the person can get attached to first aid provider. So if this attachment leads to dependency of the first aid giver, can this lead to a problem?
It will not lead to a problem. It is good that he is attached, at least in a good way. It has to be in a good way, okay? Because see, people who suffer together, who have similar sufferings, we tend to club together because it becomes a group where we can, it becomes our go-to group, comfort zone, things like that. It becomes, but then if the person is attached to that person, the caregiver should also explain it to that person that you have come to the limit of my capacity. I will refer you to another person, but you can always come back to me. It's not a bad thing if it is in a healthy attachment. Okay, healthy attachment, I think all of us can understand what is healthy. Okay, so if it is a healthy attachment, it's good. The service provider, it's good because at least he is making some progress in getting himself attached again. But if it reaches beyond the capacity of the person who is giving the help, then the person who is giving the help should explain it clearly and in a very supportive manner that the person needs additional help and that he or she is no longer able to provide, but always say that I am here for you, because that is PFA. You're not the counselor. Always remember that. In counseling, we always talk about I am here for you if you want to make change yourself. So that is like, in counseling, we always make that limit, because making the change, making decision, we are not decision makers, or we are not advisors to that person, to our client. Same way, if you are the service, the first responder. So normally it's very okay that he attaches to you, but the person who is attached to you should also know the limit, that when such a thing happens, you have to explain it to them that sometimes you're not enough.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Ma'am, nice meeting you again for the second time. The first time we met when you were holding that menopause seminar. It's
Okay.
always it is always enlightening and an insightful, moment whenever I listen to it. I learn a lot of things. Um, since I am not from psychology background, I'm from social work background. But
Mm-hmm.
from your lecture, I come to know that this psychological first aid can be provided not only by the psychologist.
Yeah.
So that is one very helpful thing that I can be making use of it. And in the context of the crisis that is happening at the moment, I understand, and everybody understands here, since everybody is from psychology background. In a crisis situation, everybody is like being hit in a different manner. Like for children, they will be hit in a different manner. Adolescent will be hit in a different manner. Women, men will be hit in a different manner. I am interested to work with adolescent. So any the session that we are having is general in nature, it's generic in nature, which can be applicable for all. But I want a detailed uh, problem or trauma that the adolescent is undergoing this crisis situation, because they people usually feel that they are not a bread earner, so we did not put them into priority. They are not taking care of the family, so we are not putting them into priority. So adolescent, we were thinking that they can take care of themselves, and they will be having less kind of a traumatic experience in the crisis situation. But then I think adolescent is the one where a group, the age group where somehow I feel, if I use the word neglected, I may be wrong, you can correct me, but I feel that they are neglected because we feel that they are physically and psychologically strong and they can handle. But then there are a lot of psychological trauma that an adolescent is undergoing and overcoming on their own. So I would just want to know and highlight on adolescents, specific adolescents, because I find them, they are very vulnerable in any crisis situation. Because only one example, they have this revenge kind of a mindset that and then that can
Mm.
lead on to a very traumatic experience the rest of his adult life also. So specifically on adolescent, what are the kind of mental trauma that they can undergo in this crisis situation, and how are we supposed to help them?
Okay, see, as I've mentioned before, we respond in very different manners. Likewise, adolescent will also respond in they'll have different kinds of ways in which they respond. And we should also understand always that adolescence is the time of stress. Higher stress, it is time of turbulence, as it is physically, hormonally, and they are growing up at that point of time. But then a lot depends on their support system. Okay, more support system. If they have a support system, the PFA giver or the next service provider, if the next support, like if they said, okay, this is what they are doing it to us, we should do it back. This is how we will react back. Then,
I
yeah.
have to interrupt.
Mhm.
Can we? I'm creating a new link. Can we join again? It will take a matter of 2 minutes. So that I think there are many questions more. Would
Okay.
it be okay for you? No. Okay. Yeah.
But adolescent, they will respond in so many different. Again, the way that they respond, it will be. Let's just say the way that children respond is very different. But adolescent, since they are they will react in a manner very close to that of adults. But the thing is, it depends on what information is fed to them in the immediate distress. If it is if information is in a positive manner, the way that they respond can be, even though it's distressing, they may be in an optimistic manner. If they are given information in a very negative manner or in a very instigating manner, then the way they respond to it will be in that manner, because their mental set is not as fixed as us adults. So the way that they respond, so that is where the first responder is so important, especially in the case of adolescents, because the environment that they are subject to immediately after the calamity has a lot to do with the recovery system, the methods of recovery, and the methods in which they react. So if the first responder is very panicky, that is why I've already said, if you don't feel that you are adequate, don't go. Because whatever manner in which a first responder treats that person will definitely affect the way that an adolescent reacts. Because these adolescents are very vulnerable. They are very easy to influence, and they are very easy to change and brainwash. Okay. If you brainwash them in a manner in which they are doing this to you, fight back. They're very gullible in those terms. So how is it that you want them to react? How is it that you want them to react? Because it is the time of their vulnerability.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and the scenario is very vulnerable. So at the time of vulnerability, if a person who responds, if it is a respondent, the one who helps that person, who supports that person in the most distressing situation, would be like a savior. Will be like a savior for that adolescent, somebody that he's going to look up to for the rest of his life because he saved his life. And they will be very, very easy to manipulate. Not like us adults, where we have a fixed set of mind. So I feel that you have to be very careful how you address your adolescents, or your, in a matter of fact, your young adults also, because they already understand now. They already have a concept of what is happening. They are in already trouble. They already all that is already existing.
Yes.
And as it is, adolescents are very impulsive. So if you want them to be aggressive, they can be very aggressive. If they want them to be very empathetic, they can be very empathetic also. If you feel like brainwashing them to fight back, they will also fight back.
Exactly.
So that is because they're at that most vulnerable stage. So you have to be very careful about, I am not going to talk about agendas here. I don't know how you feel about it. I don't want to push agendas here. But whatever agenda that you are going to push them, this is the most vulnerable time. And I don't like it to be bad agendas. I hope that it is a good agenda actually. But then it is like, this is the time when they're most vulnerable. And for adolescent, social facilitation is so important, where you follow the leader and you do as how others are doing. If you always want to be in group than being out group. So if you want to be in group, you follow the main group, and I hope the main group is leading them well, because this is where, if you're going to recruit them for something, then it becomes
Exactly,
very
ma'am. Actually, that usually also happen, especially in the civil war situation that we
yeah,
are
it
facing at
usually
the
does.
moment.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it usually does. So, and that is why all the fighters usually are young boys and girls.
Exactly.
I remember when we were younger, I used to have this, even though I've spoken about not talking about yourself, I just want to give an example. I had this, when I was in, I joined class 12, I had this girl who was a friend, who was a few years older than me, who was already a Sri Lankan, who was already in the LTT. You know, she used to teach us tell us all about how they were like, the underground in the LTT, and how much we used to sympathize with the LTT because of what she used to tell us. It was a real experience, because later on, she wrote a book a few years back. She wrote a book. She's living in Australia. She wrote a book which was banned by the Indian government because of its partiality to the LTT. But even though the LTT is no longer there, so I understand how vulnerable and how easily influenced our mind is in that ideology. If you teach them one ideology and you follow that, you brainwash them, then that ideology stays with them for a long period of time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
I'm welcome. Any other question? I have sent the PPT, the material, the presentation material, to Ma'am Rosalind. I think she
Yes,
will.
ma'am, I've shared in the group.
Okay.
Ma'am, we have one more question. Priscilla asked, since most of our cases will be through phone calls, can we hear more about in-call services? Because I feel there can be a huge gap in being physically present and providing help only through phone calls or messages.
No. Phone calls, I remember during COVID times, because once people are in the CCC, Triple C, that is COVID Care Center, we're not able to reach them, but we reach them a lot through calls. And of course, even in the quarantine centers also, we reach them through calls. You're a listener. Wherever you are, whether you're present physically or not, you're the listener. Usually your calls will come, distress calls comes in the night. It starts from around 12 till 2, 3 in the mornings, because that is where the distress starts and the nightmares start, the insomnia starts. During the day, you have social support, you have friends to support you, you don't think about it because you have company and you are doing this or that. Then you're all alone in the night, and that is where you need somebody. You need a listener at that time. So online, most probably you will, most onlines will be rarer during the days as compared to the nights. No? Once you start answering your calls in the night, who calls you? Somebody calls you who needs you to listen to their problems. You're not a problem solver. You're not an advisor. You are the listener. Always remember that. And they will be asking you, what shall I do? Go back, retract, use a reflective method and ask them, what is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to do? Instead of them asking you or you answering them, what is it that they should do? Answer them with a question, asking them, what is it that you feel the best that you can do? Because you're not the problem solver. Always remember that problem has to be solved by themselves. That is not the way either counseling or PFA works. It works in a manner where the person tries to solve problems himself. Because even if you are just the mere listener and the supporter, unconditional support you're going to give that person. You're not going to be somebody who questions them. You're not somebody who is going to, judge them. You're the supporter. Support that person, listen to that person. That is the same scenario in counseling. You're not the one who is going to give advice, because if you give the wrong advice, the blame is going to go to you. No, you're not that somebody. You're not going to give the advice. You're not going to give, you can give options. You can give options, but I don't suggest that you do, because you're not a psychologist. So just become a listener and link. Always remember, link. If you feel that you are no longer able to give the support that the person requires, link him to another person. Be the link. Find the linkage to the other support system. I hope that answers your question.
Priscilla, you can speak up now. I think we have enough time. So. Okay, so
how do you assess yourself as fit, right?
Ma'am,
yes.
the question is about self-assessment to determine whether they are fit to do PFA.
How confident are you? How confident are you? Are you afraid of the situation? Fitness is a state of mind. I always say that if you're not going to go panic, if you feel that you're passionate enough, if you feel that, you are fit enough, confident enough, you're fit. But if you're not confident enough, don't go in. If you lose confidence, just say, I'm not confident enough. Get out. Before you yourself need a PFA. It is not a matter of others assessing you. It's a matter of self-assessment, saying that I'm confident enough. I want to help. I'm confident enough. Try it out. Go to the scenario. Test the waters. If you feel that you're not confident enough, get out again. It's all about your mental fitness. And you yourself knows how fit you are. Do I answer your question? It may be vague, but then these are turbulent times. If you were a professional, I would have said, what is your degree? But I wouldn't say, because these are very desperate times. But if you feel that you have enough to support that person, it means that you're fit enough. If you're not scared of that situation, will not break down, I think you are fit enough. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, I have a question from my side. We have a lot of boundaries making when it comes to therapy. But what about in PFA situation? How much can we make our boundaries? Can we set our boundaries? Okay, being assertive and all works, but I would want you to speak on if it's possible for the volunteers to hear it out. Like someone might call in the middle of the night and would go on and timing settings, priming them, or telling them that, okay, this is not something I can do, can I hand your case over to my supervisor or someone who can handle you more? So how can they make that smooth transition so that it doesn't hurt both the party?
Yeah, as you've said earlier, you have to be assertive. You have to, sometimes we need to put ourselves foot up. We have to put our foot down.
Mm-hmm.
Say that this is beyond my limits, and said, like, if they go on and on and on and you're losing sleep. Like once I had a case that went on and on till about 2 in the night, and I said, okay, it's getting very late. I also need my beauty sleep. Why don't we presume again tomorrow when it is daytime and I'm off work? Because, I have to work, and I would like to say bye-bye to you for now, since I hope that tonight has been fruitful enough. Before they can, usually before they give you an answer, it's better after you have said bye-bye, everything, it's better to switch off the phone if it gets too much, because they always make excuses. And I've said again, you're not paid, frankly speaking, you're not paid. You are doing it out of a humanitarian work, out of necessity, things like that. Some other night, fix that timing. Even if you don't have a call with somebody, just make the person feel that you have, it's not lying as such, but then know that you have your limits, and that your time is also precious.
Ma'am,
Yes.
I have one more observation. To provide PFA, I think klom ngai wanga actually top nin kasalawa. I think you
No.
need to have a bag full of skills that should come with you as well. Not only this klom ngai da.
Counselor ini lo di hi in sharing ngai. Zana tlai yo de ponon forget to counselor kan minon phone sang tani. Mo, but PFA petuka counselor ni lo di ka, you have to understand that. You'll always have to understand that. And you have to be first responder in Petuan. That is why we have that link. Okay? That is why we have that link. Look and link. You have to look out, search that link, and give that link away. Because you're the first responder. You're not the counselor. Even if they have found a bond with you, that's why you don't talk to them night overnight. That is no longer PFA. That becomes counseling. So
There
you
has
have to
to
set
be a
that
thin
boundary.
line dividing that.
Yeah, you have to set that boundary.
PFA
Because
provider and a
PFA
counselor.
is at that instant. Psychological first aid is at that instant where there is a crisis and it needs to be resolved. And once the crisis is resolved, link that person to a service provider, whether it's a mental health provider or it is a hospital,
Medical
whatever.
aid provider.
Yeah, overnight. At least give them with water. Give them something, food. Kabakatu, once you provide them a shelter somewhere they can go safe. Always remember that there are other people who are more in need of you, in a position of surviving, than those in the homes and centers. Because these are very the scenario is so traumatic and very diffuse and confusing. There is no order anymore. So at least if they have, if you provide them safety, support, water, food, a roof over their head where they are safe, I think now is that is, if they can provide that much, that is huge right now, I feel, because the next step is a long way. Survival is the
Ma'am,
most
I
important.
think, sorry to interrupt, from what you said, I can gather, I think it is very, very important for us to train the people who are working in relief camps,
Yeah, relief
not only
camp.
psychologists.
The first responder will be
Yes, the first
in the
responder who
field,
will be dealing
bringing
with,
them to relief camps,
yeah,
and it
yeah.
is in the relief camps that other further PFA as well as
Mm.
mental health care can be given.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there can be series. It has to be in a series. First, people who are in the war zone that they
Yeah,
brought to
exactly.
safety.
That is,
The
I
person
think that
who
is
brings
very,
them
very
to
important.
safety is already giving them
Ah,
PFA. Then
ah,
once they are in the camps, and they are given again, once they are in the camps,
yeah.
provide them with what they need. The camp would have already provided them a roof over their head, food,
Mm-hmm.
and shelter. Food,
Ah,
water, whatever that they need, clothes.
the basic needs.
The basic needs will be there, physiological needs
Yes,
will be there.
yes, yes,
That is
yes.
when the disorders will also emerge. When they are in the survival mode, when they are in the survival mode, the mind takes a back seat because the basic drive is for survival. So the rest take a back seat. But when after survival, they sit back and they have survived, that is where the nightmares and the flashbacks are going to start kicking in. That is where they need the mental health expert.
Mm-hmm.
Miss, I have a bit of a silly question, but
Okay, I think it's
earlier you mentioned that we should know our limits and when
yes.
we should refer somebody to who. Yeah. So in that situation, suppose I refer them to somebody who can provide better support than I can. So would it, however, be okay for me to reach out to them from time to time out of concern to know how they're
Yeah,
doing?
no problem. That you can do. How are you? Are you feeling better? Is there anything that you need? Things like that. Because you're the supporter. You're the giving them support. And support goes a long way. It soothes the heart. It mends a broken heart. Definitely you can reach out and he can talk to you about his progress also. You can ask about the progress that he's making. It's just that you're referring him to somebody more professional than you. Nothing wrong with it. We do it all the time.
Miss, so in that situation, what if they start relying more on me instead of the professional again?
No,
Then,
they're not going to rely more on you. You're not going to give them that chance. You're just going to inquire how they are. You're not the helper. Always make sure that they know that.
okay, thank you.
Mom, I also have another question again, or more so, just I would request you to highlight it. Now that, these are very young, and I, including myself, young women and young men, will be displaying our numbers out there for our first responders. There will be many people who would want to, in the pretext of needing the aid, but would be like somehow flirting in between, and yeah, not
Definitely.
taking things seriously. How are we going to respond that?
Young girls, boys always react like that. But then be professional. No touch, no cute smile. Dress up formally.
These
Cover your
are, yeah, these
cover your
are
face.
like in a
Make sure
physical
that you look
context.
make sure that you look professional.
Yes.
You are going to a very big zone.
Mhm.
No makeup. If you dress in a manner of a professional, they will not try to flirt with you. Maintain that professional persona when you went, that serious persona when we all have our own persona, right? The way that you smile, the way that you dress up. Usually when we were when we were doing clinical field work, my professor always told me to wear a shirt with collar, long sleeve, and if I'm also going to wear a pair of jeans, make sure that my jeans are not tight. Like these days we have mom's jeans and all that. In those days we had so that none of my body show, my back or my tummy, or cover yourself up. look the way that you dress. Like if you just go in a tank top and a tight t-shirt or shorts, they're going to flirt with you. But if you dress up in a serious manner, if you dress up in a formal manner, nobody will, and have that mask that we all wear, that serious mask that we all wear. When make sure that you mean business when you go into these areas. Always separate your business persona with your friendly persona. Wear that business persona when you go.
Yes, I think that is very important. Even in our training, it's very much stressed upon. Beyond that, what about on phone calls? I can be assertive, but what about?
Don't joke in your phone calls. As I've said, if we're reaching 9, I think we'll end at 9, right?
Yeah.
That's how you make a limit to your, when you make a call also. Let's end by 9 so that this will be the last. We'll have it some other time again. Go through with it, and if you need any more, we can have another session, no problem. So whenever you go in the field, which you are going to go, the most important is how you carry yourself. Be confident. Okay? Know that you are always the professional. Know the reason why you are there. You are there to help. You are there to give support. You are not there when you're making a call also. Don't joke with that person. How are you? When they make that, even if they make a comment that you do not like, just ask them why you're making this kind of comment. Be assertive. Tell them, this is how it should be done. This is, if you need, don't call me for this kind of thing. I thought you really needed me. That's why I'm here. But if you're going to make silly comments, if you're going to flirt with me, please don't call me. This is not who I am. Try to get your point. And if they still call you, that means they really need you. If they don't call you back, no fret. Don't worry. It means they don't really need you. A person who really needs you would adhere to your rules and principles.
Okay, then let's wind it up because it's getting late. And thank you so much again for your time, your energy, all the resources you put in. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was insightful, very comprehensive, and practical. And I would say there are soft skills that you demonstrated also, and also you you gave us the idea of the thin line between the counseling and the PFA, which I myself benefited a lot from, and I am sure all the participants benefited from it. Thank you so much. And we have prepared, a certificate of appreciation. I just want to read it out. I will mail this to you, but
okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
I'll just download it.
Yeah. So it reads like this: letter of appreciation. This certificate is presented to Dr. Zautan Zami for having served as guest speaker, delivering her expertise on the topic orientation of the professionals on psychological first aid in response to the civil war in Manipur. To our tribal Eimi psychologist, who teamed up in the wake of the recent violence towards the tribals in Manipur, held through virtual mode on the 30th May 2023, organized by the Gangte Psychosocial Support Team, and undersigned Chairperson Dr. Lalming Moy Gangte and Secretary Mercy Ting Zawat, myself. So, ma'am, I would also want to request you that in case, and I'm sure we need your, support, your guidance, your expertise again, I would reach out to you again.
Definitely. You're always welcome.
Thank you so much. Means a lot to us. Thank you.
Okay, so everybody, good night. Till we meet
Good
again.
night, ma'am. And thank you.
Thank you so much.